Boxing match that'll be more entertaining than the Adrian Peterson and Le'Veon Bell fight? Try the gauntlet that'll be the AFC West. It's time for garbage time. Guys, welcome into Garbage Time Fantasy Football. Tonight we are getting into the gauntlet that is the AFC West and talking about them from the fantasy football perspective. Tonight I am joined by Ryan, and obviously it's me, Joe, the workhorse as of lately. How are you doing tonight, Ryan?
Good, man. How you doing? Putting in a lot of hours.
Kind of feels like it. Yeah, I know. You and Ron will probably come into relief during the days now that your schedule is starting to wind down a little bit, I know. So how you feeling today?
Pretty good, man. The weather was good. Got to like 90 outside. Got some work done.
We're in the dead part of the off season, so everything's about surmising here on Garbage Time Fantasy Football. Yes, and guys, if you like what you hear from us on Garbage Time Fantasy Football, make sure to like and subscribe to the show. If you're really shy and need to listen to us in audio format instead of looking at these ugly mugs all day, you can watch us and listen to us on, well, you can watch us on YouTube, but you can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, Google, Pandora, Amazon, Iheartradio, Tunein, and anywhere else you get your podcast. And make sure if you want to leave us questions, you can do so down in the comments live here on the show, at our Twitter, garbage_timeff, or on our Instagram, which also has sample clips, at Garbage Time Fantasy Football. Also, don't be afraid to visit us at www.garbagetimeff.com, where you can leave us voicemails that will play live on the show. Even if they're contradicting anything we say, we love the conflict and we'll love to bring it up on the show. Without further ado, Ryan, you ready to get into the news?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's do it.
News updates.
All right, first thing spinning around the NFL today, as it has been for the last 2 years, is Deshaun Watson's. What you always seem to be leading off with. Last year it was Aaron Rodgers, and now this year it's Deshaun Watson's. So the Texans were declared in a lawsuit over the last 2 days as potentially being culpable to his activity. And Deshaun Watson's disciplinary hearing starts tomorrow and Wednesday. So it seems like we're getting pretty close to a resolution here. What's your thoughts on this for fantasy football? And what do you think is coming down for the wire for the Texans and for Deshaun Watson? And ultimately, how is this going to affect the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah. So it's going to be very bad for anyone that snagged Deshaun Watson, I think. I definitely think he's done for the year. It's looking like they're going to be trading Baker. So they're going to be rolling with good old Bridgewater, right? That's who's over there.
No, sir. It is not Bridgewater. It's Brissett.
The other B. That's even worse. So
what's your thoughts on Brissett for fantasy football? If he's got to start the entire year for the Browns, if that ends up being the case, is there any chance that Baker Mayfield ends up starting with them? Or do you believe the Twitter rumors that Baker will potentially be in Seattle and this will just be the case that he would never, ever come back for the Browns?
Yeah, I think Baker's out of town. I think Brissett plays the whole season just because the Browns don't have any other option. I think Baker's out.
So what does Brissett look like for fantasy football for the Cleveland Browns then?
Not good. I mean, he has that rushing ability, so that's always nice, especially for fantasy football. But I mean, he had some decent games with the Colts.
Right? Decent games.
Yeah, I mean, he could play. He can win you some games, but I don't think it'll really be fantasy relevant.
Now, do you think he's at least a little bit relevant in Superflex leagues?
I was just about to say, I think I could see him using Superflex leagues just because of the rushing ability.
Really?
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting that you say that. Now, question though, like how far up would you put him in that quarterback ranking 2 for Superflex leagues?
It'd be like towards the bottom. Yeah, probably like 24, 25. I mean, it won't be pretty, but he might get you a couple games.
So you don't think he can elevate himself above someone like maybe a Sam Darnold?
I mean, I ranked Sam Darnold lower than that.
Really, that just sounds very depressing for fantasy football there, Ryan. Thanks for that. All right, next little bit of news we have on for tonight is Kenny Pickett has been seen working with the third string in Pittsburgh. Is this just because he is getting acclimated to the Pittsburgh offense, or are they just going to make him earn everything he's going to have to do this year and potentially not start him? Or do you think he's going to be starting right out from the fly when training camp comes out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be one of those situations where people are just making a mountain out of a molehill kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he didn't start right after training camp, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he did. So, like, I don't know. I just kind of like to wait and see, but I think everything right now is just kind of typical. So I think right now for some reporters, there's nothing to report on, so they just find something.
Yeah, it kind of feels like they're grasping for straws right now. It really just kind of feels like there's not a lot going on around the league right now. So this is just kind of the smoke screen of the offseason so they can get some clickbait stuff. I really see him potentially being the number one quarterback in Pittsburgh, and I think he will start for them from week one. He's kind of the hometown kid they want to sell tickets to. And, you know, in Superflex League, he could have some value this year, but I think you're going to have a long hold on him. If you draft him in the first round of your rookie drafts or in your startups, I think you're going to be looking at him in the long term. And with those little hands, you're hoping he turns out to be Drew Brees. And we just simply don't know if that's going to be the case with him.
Yeah.
Just going back to the Deshaun Watson story really quick, though. What's your gut on how long he's going to be suspended for? Do you think it'll be for the entire year like the rumors on Twitter are saying?
So,
and are you absolutely stupid to draft him at any point in this offseason without any clarity?
Part of me, like, I was reading an article that mentioned that, like, maybe the NFL intentionally leaked a year that way that if it's not a year, they can be like, oh, well, that's what we were pushing for. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm gonna say 8 games. I'm gonna say half a season, 8 games.
Okay, so Brissett will only be halfway as valuable then when they're almost out of the playoff picture, and Watson will have to come back and save them. My gut's going to be the entire year. I don't think he'll be suspended indefinitely, but I think it'll be a clear-cut 1-year suspension and then other stuff. And if other scenarios end up coming up, maybe more allegations, they may look at more games next year. But as of right now, these are only civil cases. There's nothing criminal anymore, so it's a little bit of a strange case right now. And in the political mantra of where the world is right now, I think they need to make a statement. I think they're going to be looking for the full year.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so we'll see ultimately, but I would steer clear of him completely for fantasy football right now. I wouldn't draft him. You know, maybe if he comes off the waiver wire, if it is half a year, like you're saying, potentially you could do that, but someone will probably pick him up with the last pick and let him ride the bench in your league. It just won't be me. Next little bit of information that we have for you tonight is, it's not even really information, it's more of a non-story, is just that Deebo Samuel has not rescinded his trade request yet. Is this telling that he still wants to be traded from the 49ers, or do you think he's just coming to camp to do work and is expecting to get a contract this year at some point?
Yeah, I just think they're just status quo right now. Like you said, again, it's just making news out of not news. Like, I didn't.
Mountains out of anthills.
Like, I mean, I don't know. Do players even officially rescind trades, or do they just kind of like fizzle out? Like, I don't know.
I think this is something a beat writer, and typically, you know, this is something that a San Francisco beat writer would write about. So I think this is highly appropriate that they're going to go down this alley and say that he hasn't rescinded his trade, because I've never heard of a player rescinding a trade. This is new.
So I'm not looking a ton into that either.
Yeah, so we can cross this up. It's just off-screen fodder coming from the San Francisco beat writers once again.
I get it, man. It's boring right now, so you want to find something.
Yeah, I guess, but you know, this isn't what I would have been looking for. All right, another Twitter rumor out there. Seattle Seahawks are reportedly close to a trade for Baker Mayfield, and this kind of came out on Sunday night. Do you think there's anything to this rumor? Because this rumor, I kind of felt like came out for the Panthers last week too. This one seemed to be picking up a little bit more steam, though. Anything here?
So Was it you that when I heard that you thought the Panthers rumor was to get the Seahawks to do it, or was it vice versa?
So I thought that the Browns were going to be pushing this narrative to potentially get the Seahawks to jump on a trade. This is kind of really what I thought was going to be going on.
Oh, okay. I think it's legit. And really, it's kind of nice for the Seahawks. They might not be in as much of a dumpster fire as they were about to be without Russell Wilson. I mean, Baker was probably a lot better than whatever they were going to be getting or playing this upcoming season.
Yeah, so excellent on you, Seattle. You're going to be going from a future Hall of Fame quarterback to an above-average quarterback. Absolutely fantastic on you. 5 stars. Couldn't get much better than that.
It's better than going to a below-average quarterback.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So what would Baker Mayfield look like for fantasy football for the Seattle Seahawks? Where do you rank him, and where is his value?
Not like I really just think he basically stays like the same. I mean, the Lockett and Metcalf are, very talented, but I don't see it's not like I'm expecting Baker to go to the Seahawks and become a QB1.
And it's not like he didn't have Jarvis and Odell at one point. He was still just an average fantasy football quarterback.
And was still like a fringe QB2.
Yeah, he's good for your super flex team, but I mean, in redraft, he's nothing more than your bench quarterback. I don't think. I don't think he really elevates the play around him either. To be honest, right. He's solid. He can win you some games, but he's definitely no Russell Wilson.
No, and yeah, he'll win you some games as far as if the Seahawks are your team, he'll win you some games. But for fantasy, you do not want all of your eggs in that basket.
No, absolutely not. But I would like him a lot better than I would Geno Smith and Drew Lock. He's a much better option. But if you're looking to tank and to get one of those quarterbacks next year, Seattle may want to slide under the radar and avoid this trade. But they're in a tough division anyway, so they may lose those games anyway.
True.
Last little bit of news tonight is another Twitter rumor. So we've seen the pictures out there today, and they were, not erotically shared, but just appreciatively shared in our message board on Instagram of Saquon Barkley looking pretty good and in shape, and it looks like he's nice and healthy for this upcoming year. So what's our expectations of Saquon Barkley going into this year, man? Do you really think he could finally break that premise of the top 5 now that it seems like that offensive line has improved and Dable is his head coach? Or do you think he's in for another disappointing year and we're just puffing him up again?
Dude, you're an NFL player. You're going to be in amazing shape every offseason.
Not like that guy, though. He's just chiseled. He's like DK Metcalf.
Saquon Barkley's just always in good shape. So, I don't know. I feel like that's not news. Hey, an NFL quarterback's in very good shape right now. Yeah.
So what you're saying is for my dynasty team is I should just be posting up those photos on our sleeper board and then try to accumulate some value for him and trade him away?
Yeah.
Well, Ron's got no running back, so he would love if I did that. But sorry, Ron, I'm not trading him because I think he's actually got high upside. And I do think that he can break into the top 10 this year and be a very good running back. I think we could see that running back that we saw his rookie year. And I don't think he's going to get hurt this year, and he's finally going to be healthy because I think Dable's smart enough to get the correct usage out of him. And I think there's enough there for him to be impactful this year. So I look for Saquon Barkley to have a nice, solid year
this year. 25. That shocks me.
Yeah, it feels like he's been in the league a lot longer, doesn't it?
Right.
Then again, when you're playing with the Giants, every year feels like 3 years in the NFL for you.
Years, man.
That'll bog you down and send you to retirement very quickly.
That's true. And just when you look at his rookie season, the amount of receiving work he got was obnoxious. And then after that, I mean, the receiving work has really gone downhill.
Oh, absolutely. I 100% agree with you, but I think we're in for a big bounce back for him this year. It sounds like you're a little bit more lukewarm on him than I am. But where do you rank him then outside of the top 10?
Yeah, I'm going to say outside top 10. I would say top 15, though, if he stays healthy all season.
So it sounds like you've got him on that fringe running back 1, high upside, running back 2 range, which I've got him a little bit higher, but it's not far off for him. I don't see him falling off this year or anything by any means. All right, you ready to see the creepy dry rating divisional breakdown clip that we have?
Um,
I mean, you don't have a choice. It's coming up anyway. So
that's fair. You're just giving me the illusion of choice.
all right, let's see that Rams player. I mean, he still plays in Los Angeles. It's for the wrong Los Angeles teams, but still fitting for the division I'm right now.
Every time. Why don't we have it divisionally?
Because I would have to make 8 clips, and that's too much work for someone that works 2 jobs. So that's why it's not happening.
You technically don't work 2 jobs. You just work the same job, but it's at 2 different locations.
Just at night, which makes it 2 jobs, you ass.
That makes it a 1A and a 1B.
Yeah, all right. If you want 8 of them, you make them then, now that you have summers off. Must be nice working in the realm of teachers.
I mean, they're hard-earned
summers.
Yeah.
All right, so first team we're going to get into tonight on the AFC West breakdown. And let us preface, this is a division that you want to draft heavily in your redraft this year because they are going to be very high for fantasy scoring this year. And I believe you can get a lot of output out of all 4 teams. So heavily target these teams in your draft. And the first one is the obvious one we're going to go with here, which is the Kansas City Chiefs. So first question I've got in this breakdown for you. Can Patrick Mahomes make up for the loss of Tyreek Hill and finish as a tier 1 quarterback in fantasy football in 2022? Talking about tier 1, we'll put him in the top 5.
Top 5?
Yes.
I mean, last season he hit top 5, but it wasn't by much, man.
Depending on the format, it was top 3.
Really?
Yeah. 3 to 5, just depending on the format.
Yeah. Yeah, so I got him at 4.
Okay.
On my rankings. But, that's doing full season. So if you take off fantasy seasons end a little sooner, I'm gonna say yeah. I think if you draft him for the top 5, I don't foresee you being absolutely devastated regardless. Mm-hmm. Tyreek Hill, yeah, took up a lot of work. I think he got like 1,200 receiving yards last year, like around 100 receptions. So it was a solid workload, probably about 25% of Mahomes' passes. But It's a good team. They still got a lot of weapons there. They have a really good coach. I think he's going to be fine.
Weapons? You mean weapons?
Weapons.
It sounds like you're on my end of the camera. Usually I'm the one saying those words.
It's bedtime.
Oh, that's why. Yeah, I forgot. That's what happens when you have kids.
Yes, exactly.
All right, yeah. I think he easily breaks into the top 5 this year, even with Tyreek Hill being out. Listen, he's playing in the AFC West, which I think there's going to be a lot of shootouts this year. There's 4 heavy-end quarterbacks in this division, so we're talking about 6 games where he's going to be absolutely throwing it around the yard. Patrick Mahomes does that anyway. I think there's going to be a lot of shootouts for that team this year. Teams are going to come right at them, similar to how Buffalo did last year. So I see Patrick Mahomes easily breaking into the top 5. Always has a number 1 quarterback overall chance to be this year, but I think that'll go to someone else. We'll talk about them in a little bit.
Yeah, we will.
All right, next question I've got for you. Is Clyde Edwards-Helaire a true value or even a running back 2 for fantasy football this year?
No. I mean, he's just been I think the Chiefs whiffed on this one quite a bit.
I do too.
Did they take him before Jonathan Taylor?
Yes, because Jonathan Taylor went in the 2nd round.
Yes, that's painful.
That shit hurts.
He's just, I mean, even William, like CEH was supposed to be a receiving back, and then Williams ended up taking away the 3rd down back role from him too. Like he just doesn't. The transition from college to NFL just was not there. I think he is lucky that of all the possible free agents like McKissick and some of those guys, that Ronald Jones is who they took. I don't think Ronald Jones is necessarily significantly better than CEH, but I definitely think he cuts into that work. And I would honestly be more like, I'm more likely to take a late round draft risk on Ronald Jones than even touch CEH at all.
You hear that, Kansas City? Your take is you should have taken Jonathan Taylor over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So, Ryan, I completely agree with you to the sentiment, and this was actually the next question I had for you was, do we see Ronald Jones as sleeper value? And Ron Seymour kind of hit on this when he went and talked to Jake Seeley of The Athletic on one of our early episodes. Go back and watch that, guys. Jake Seeley had some good information on that episode for fantasy football in the upcoming season and schooled us in the comments and schooled Ron for the 20 minutes that he was talking to us. So, yes, I believe Ron was onto something here, though, about saying Ronald Jones could pick up the passing work here for the Kansas City Chiefs, and you could potentially get him as a late-round flyer in your leagues. JJ started talking about the topic of the zero tight end. I mean, the zero running back position where you take positional advantages, drafting high-end quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight end as opposed to running backs early in your draft. And this is someone you could target potentially later in your draft. Ronald Jones, I think, could be a good sleeper if you decide to go with that format on your team. Nothing else, Ryan?
No, I think you crushed it. Still, like that draft format would have me so scared and nervous. Like,
yeah, I've never been a fan of it, but we have to cover every format here for the people that like to play it because some do prefer wide receivers. You don't go that far as to the zero running back strategy, but you like to take your wide receivers high, so you're closer to that format than I definitely am.
That's true. That is true. I am big on my wide receivers.
All right, next question I've got out for you. So let's get into the receivers of the Kansas City Chiefs tonight. As a rookie, can Skyy Moore emerge as Mahomes' favorite option for fantasy football? Or is that going to fall to Juju Smith-Schuster, McCole Hardman, or Valdez-Scantling for the wide receivers on that team?
Well, okay. I love how you specified for the wide receivers because we all know the favorite target is Travis Kelce.
Yes, he's the true number one, but we'll get to him after.
I don't know. I honestly don't know if he will be the favorite target of the wide receivers. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be in a weird spot where like he's going to have three guys in his wide receiver room, like three wide receivers on the field at once that he is yet to play with. Like that's got to be weird. Three brand new wide receivers out of four of them.
Are you leaning towards some Cole Hardman?
No, I don't think so. But I definitely think Skyy Moore will have value, but I put him as more of like a wide receiver 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he's going to be the favorite target, but...
Do you think any of them emerge?
I'm going to say Juju. I'm going to give it to Juju. I think being back in like, kind of like how we were talking about where he would be the wide receiver 1, but he would actually almost be choice number 2 because you have Kelce there.
Yep.
Having Kelce there might be back to the similar situation that Juju had out in Pittsburgh with Antonio Brown there. So he might not be drawn as much double coverage. Yeah, I think he could be successful.
This kind of has the feel of the old New England teams when Edelman was there and they spread the ball all around the field. That's kind of the feeling I'm getting with the Kansas City Chiefs this year. And I think you'll see the running backs get that work, Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Ronald Jones. I think Ronald Jones could get a fair amount of work this year. And Travis Kelce is going to be the Gronk of this offense. He's better than Gronk. But I think that's the kind of
he's a better receiver than Gronk, but at like a true tight end.
No, don't give me that. Kelsey's a better.
Gronk is a way better blocker.
Okay, we're talking about now. All right. That could be a debate for another day when we're not talking about fantasy football. I kind of get the opinion that I think they're going to spread this ball around the field a lot. You're going to see a few of these guys probably have 800, 900 yards. I think the favorite flyer will be Skyy Moore, just based on the talent. That talent is there. You can see that talent on tape. The one that interests me the most, I think, though, is Valdez-Scantling, who is the deep target. He, I think, will be the one that kind of takes that Tyreek Hill role. Mm-hmm. Although McCole Hardman can do that, and McCole Hardman has proven to not be very viable at doing that. He's going to have the first opportunity, I think, to do that, and you could see him potentially have a few decent games early. I think that role, honestly, will end up going to Valdez-Scantling, who got the 3-year contract. Smith-Schuster, I mean, could play the slot, could be good, but, I mean, there's a reason why teams weren't very interested in giving him a long-term contract. The talent's there. He's had the 1,400-yard season, but we haven't seen that since when he was the number one option there. So I think he's going to kind of just fall into the committee, and I think he's going to be overdrafted this year.
I do think, like, this is kind of off topic a little bit, but I'm super excited to see MVS, like, at Kansas City. I mean, he's been pretty a non-factor since he's been in the league. I think it's so cool he'll be in Kansas City and could possibly go off.
Yeah, people always fall in love with him too and draft him because he was with Aaron Rodgers too. So, he's going from Aaron Rodgers to Patrick Mahomes. So no drop off there. So we'll see if he can do something in a different scenario there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, he's definitely tall, 6'4", so a bigger target.
There's nothing wrong with taking a shot at any one of these four later in your draft. If I had to pick the order, the ones I would take them in what order? Smith-Schuster's value is too high for me, so I think in the order I would take them, it'd probably be Valdez-Scantling. Go ahead.
What's Juju's ADP right now? Do you know?
It's higher than all three of theirs. No, it's been floating around. See if you can get us an answer on that. But in the order I would take them, it would probably be Valdez-Scantling, then probably Skyy Moore. I think I would take Smith-Schuster after, and then Hartman. What about for you? What order would you take these for?
What? I think so. We're talking redraft or dynasty? I mean, obviously
redraft,
right?
Yeah. Dynasty, I think the answer is Skyy Moore, without a doubt.
I think I'd go Skyy Moore, MVS, and then Hardman.
Okay.
All right. I'm waiting to figure out where Juju is at, like what his ADP is. Can it really be that? Do you think it's just getting super inflated right now?
I do. I mean, it's not anything that's going to kill your fantasy roster. I mean, if you like him, you can throw a dart shot at him, and it's not going to kill you. But I still like the value of where these other guys are going as opposed to him.
They're saying, wide receiver 37, so 87 overall.
That's all right value.
Yeah, I actually don't think that's bad.
No. All right, you ready to move on to Travis Kelce?
Yeah, he's still Travis Kelce. He's going to be perfectly fine.
All right, let me ask you the question then. Is he going to be the top tight end in fantasy football going to age 33?
The top. I would be fine saying that, like projecting him to finish the top. Mark Andrews last season just had a ridiculous year.
And it kind of feels like he's got even more targets going his way this year.
Yeah, so that would be the one that could kind of compete with him. And then the gap between Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce and everybody else was pretty immense. Did about 50 points higher than Schultz. And then everybody else wasn't even in the 200s. So,
I mean, I think the regular culprits are there at the top. Him, Mark Andrews, Kittle's probably up there. Kyle Pitts is up there. Schultz could be interesting to see if he could potentially get up in there too. There's some
Kittle
good
had
ones.
a rough year with injuries. Schultz, like you said, that's an interesting one. I think he could still be decent. Kyle Pitts, he might kind of really break out. And then Evan Ingram, he is in the wings to have a breakout season. So
we'll talk about we're not getting into that tonight. We passed the Jags. I'm not going to entertain that comment. And we'll also talk about Darren Waller, who is another interesting topic, but I don't want to cover him until we get to the Raiders.
Do you think it is so you're saying you basically foresee the same, out of a Mark Andrews this upcoming season?
I see him being the number one, and I think it's going to be by a lot. I think Mark Andrews, I don't think we've seen his ceiling yet. I think he could potentially have a better season than he did last year, just on the fact that Hollywood Brown is gone. He could win you fantasy leagues at the tight end position, just on the positional advantage that you'll have if you have him.
Interesting.
That's how high I think of him this year.
I'm going to say Kelce. I don't know.
Ryan doesn't know what he's talking about because he absolutely froze up on us. What he was going to say at that current position, I think, is that he's a little bit lukewarm on him. And now he's back, so now he can tell us what he thinks of him.
Had to hurry up and pay my internet bill. Yeah, I don't know if I'll say top one because, like we mentioned, we have Mark Andrews there. You have Dalton Schultz there. Darren Waller, who had a rough season, but he still has that ability.
Mm-hmm.
But I still don't think you go wrong drafting Travis Kelce. Like,
if you want to pick him number one overall as your tight end position, he's still going to give you that positional advantage you'll have, unless you go up against Mark Andrews, of course.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, no, you can't go wrong with either one of these guys. He's going to obviously be the number one option and the number two option for Patrick Mahomes. So nothing wrong to prove here. And you can argue that's the same format that's going to be like Mark Andrews. So these two are going to be competing back and forth. There's absolutely no doubt about it. They're both in a similar format where they're going to be the number one option for their team this year. So you ready to move on to the Raiders?
Let's do it.
Or do you want to do the Broncos first?
No, we can go with the Raiders.
All right. So first question I've got with you over the Raiders is Davante Adams going to be the player that puts Derek Carr over the top, potentially in the top 10 quarterbacks of fantasy football this year?
It's possible. He finished right outside the top 10 last season. QB 13.
That's without him.
Yep. QB 13. And the Raiders throw it a lot. I mean, I know they have a new head coach, but Derek Carr had 626 attempts last season.
Yeah, and not only that, Josh McDaniels is the kind of offensive coordinator that is going to use the short passing game as his running game anyway. So don't look for that to drop either. So I think Derek Carr is going to be sneaky. He's a great value in the mid-rounds of this year, and he could sneak into the top 10 because, as we've said, and we have said all offseason, the AFC West is going to get into shootouts this year with all four of these teams who have great quarterbacks, and you're going to have inflated in fantasy numbers for him, and he sneakily may be a very good value for you on your fantasy team. The other three will cost you more capital to get during your drafts, and Derek Carr might be the leftover one.
His ADP right now is at 13, and I would hit QB 13, and I would absolutely.
I think it could be north of that.
Yeah, that's a steal.
Is it much of an argument to say that you could have four quarterbacks in the top 10 out of this division this year? It's possible, I think.
It's definitely possible. I mean, you have Herbert and Mahomes, I think, are like guarantees.
Yeah, no, absolute bosses. And then you're talking about the running ability of Russell Wilson and Derek Carr. It's very possible.
Right.
So, if you go a little bit heavy at the other positions, he may be the one you look at quarterback if you can't take him very early.
Yep.
So, sneaky value there. All right, next question I got for you. Is Josh Jacobs going to fall off into a running back committee with Kenyon Drake and Zamir White, or is he going to surprise us in Josh McDaniels' offense and acclimate to it? Let me preface my opinion really quick before you get into it, because everyone on Garbage Time Fantasy Football has heard it. I think he's going to not even be the starter by the end of the year, and he's going to completely fall off. He's going to fall into that weird universe where Josh McDaniels doesn't like certain players, and for some reason, I don't think he likes him, and that's why they didn't pick up his fifth-year options with a lot of the retread players. He just only likes to bring in his own players. So my gut feeling is he's either going to fall into a committee or not even have value by the end of the year. So, Ryan, with my bold take on that, what do you think is going to happen with Josh Jacobs this year?
I actually think it's going to be fine. So
not nearly the death knell I gave.
I think Josh McDaniels is going to channel his inner Patriots and have a running back that is now on an expiring contract and just run him into the ground for the whole season. We've done it before over in New England with some of our running backs. So that's what I see Josh McDaniels doing, is just on an expiring contract and just running him into the ground, giving him as much work as possible.
Okay, what is the ceiling and what is the lowest point for him then? Where do you see him?
Yeah, so I wish this stupid thing would load, but it's not going to.
You're going to have to do it off your head.
I have to use my noodle. I think he's RB2. I would say RB2 range. I don't see him. Yeah, like RB2. Like, so he finished 12th last season.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say RB2. Maybe probably in like the 15 to 20 range.
You see Kenny Drake getting any passing work in that backfield? You take him late at all? Or Zamir White? No,
I think it's possible. Like, I mean, Josh McDaniels over in New England, they've always used some passing down bats. I mean, you had James White, all those guys. So it's possible. I just don't know. It's hard when you don't know exactly what Josh McDaniels is looking to do.
agreed. The beat writers seem to like Zamir White this year too. I don't think I would be afraid to use my last pick in the draft on Zamir White as a potential flyer to see if he can do something in this offense. There's some talk about him in their mandatory mini camps, so he is making some noise there. I mean, honestly, I really do think this is going to be a committee where you're going to overdraft Josh Jacobs, and I think he'll fade off by the end of the year. I would rather take a flyer on one of these other two guys with my last pick as opposed to drafting Josh Jacobs, who I think is just going to fall flat on his face. But that's my personal opinion. Take it for what it is. It's one of my bold takes. Ryan thinks there's a little bit more of a ceiling with a high-end running back too. So take the opposing opinions and make of it what you will.
It is worth noting, Josh Jacobs has a pretty tough schedule.
Yes, he does.
For running back defenses. So Arizona, Tennessee, New Orleans,
Sounds advantageous to a committee.
All the good ones. So
good old-fashioned New England committee.
Take what you want from that. I think you'll be fine. Now, is it one that I'm like he finished RB12 last year? Like, he's not someone I'm looking at in the second or third round even. So,
I'm not getting all sexy for him, so.
No, exactly.
Nope, I'm staying away. Not going there. All right, next question I've got for you. We'll move on to Darren Waller. Can Darren Waller maintain his status as a top 5 tight end over the years, or will Davante Adams remove him from that top 5 tight end status based on the volume that may go towards his direction?
If Waller falls off, I don't think it's because of Adams. Kind of like we just alluded to, the Raiders throw a lot.
Yes, I do.
Carr with over 600 attempts. Like you said, you don't see that going away with McDaniels. If anything, I think Adams would almost be helpful to Waller. That just takes away more attention from defenses. It should almost be like, well, not, I don't know, but it definitely would kind of draw the attention away from him. I think the biggest question mark with him is just staying healthy. If you drafted him last season, probably by where you had to draft him at and what he did, you were not happy about it. What I'm waiting to see, though, is just how far he falls because of people that are worried about that. You might get him at a pretty good value.
You might, but I am of the opinion that Davante Adams, whether he is double, hell, even triple teamed, it doesn't matter. They're going to throw the ball his direction, so you're going to see more of those passes go his direction. So I think he is going to take away a little bit of the volume there for Darren Waller. You got to remember also there, Hunter Renfrow is also on the field, who showed out a little bit last year. Hunter Renfrow typically slides down in fantasy value when his tight end and counterpart is on the field. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think that Derek Carr is going to look to go to the wide receivers first as opposed to Darren Waller. I think he's going to fall down this tight end twilight zone, as we were to say, just a little bit, somewhere between that 7 to 10 range. I really think he could be a little bit disappointing this year. I don't see him falling into the top 5 this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible, and he's approaching 30, and really, he just had 2 very good seasons, 2019 and 2020. Then 2021 was a huge dud. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. His ADP right now is tight end 5.
Yeah, so right on the cusp.
I'm trying to think. I think honestly, though, there's probably 5 tight ends I like more, but I'm not positive.
We'll do that when we get to the tight end rankings episode, which coming up in about a month.
Good times.
All right.
But
go ahead.
It's definitely possible that you could see Adams give a dip to
all right.
Waller.
Yeah, I think we're going to see the true value here in the wide receiver position, and that's where McDaniels likes to send the balls, I think, most of the time in this offense. So a question I've got for you. Can Davante Adams perform just as well as he did with Aaron Rodgers with his old teammate Derek Carr, or is his status going to drop? And what is your thoughts on Hunter Renfrow? Is he a high-end wide receiver 2 in this offense?
I'll answer Hunter Renfrow first because
Okay.
I think definitely wide receiver 10 last season, and pretty much
impressive showing.
And pretty much everyone knew that was where he was looking. Now, as far as Davante Adams with dips, I mean, Derek Carr, when you look at Derek Carr versus Aaron Rodgers' stats, completion rate's almost identical, 68.9 to 68.4. Aaron Rodgers threw 4,100 yards, Derek Carr threw 4,800.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah, touchdowns. That's where the big discrepancy is 37 to 23. And then interceptions. But Derek Carr will now have Davante Adams. This might be crazy. I think Davante Adams stays right where he's at.
I think he's going to fall a little bit, not much. I think he falls more into that second round of redraft. But if you want to take him in the first round, there's nothing wrong with that because he's shown over the history of his play, he's a beast.
Yeah.
And he's got chemistry with Derek Carr. So there's I think a small multitude of outcomes. He will not fall off, I don't think, with the Raiders. It's either going to be a slight dip into the second round value or stay right at that wide receiver 1. So I don't think you have any fault drafting him late in the first round if you still like him. But I'm looking at him more in that early second round value is where I see. So I just see a slight dip with him. But
and that's probably like, I think regardless, he remains a wide receiver 1. But I do what you're saying. But like you also mentioned, I think if you draft him, I don't think you're going to be devastated at any point during the season.
No, absolutely not.
I don't think there's going to be any surprises,
Mm-hmm. All right, now moving on to the Denver Broncos. One of the most interesting trades. Yes, the Denver Broncos, one of the most interesting trades of the offseason, them getting a Hall of Fame quarterback. So let's talk about Russell Wilson. Is Russell Wilson an incredible value at his current ADP of quarterback consensus of 10 in a division that may have a lot of shootouts? Ryan Warner.
I don't know. A part of me feels like number 10 is just about right. Like, I think it's definitely possible he finishes a little bit better than that. But then I think of all the, like, really good young guys that are in the league right now.
Mm-hmm.
And while it's definitely possible he finishes better than 10, I don't think he finishes way better than 10. You know what I mean?
I love his upside. I think he could go as high as 5. So I think him at 10 is a good value, just like Derek Carr. I think he's a little bit better of a value actually than Derek Carr is. Listen, this is a division where he's going to get in shootouts. He's got nice weapons on the outside. Tim Patrick could be sneaky for him as a value weapon. We'll get to that when we talk about the wide receivers. And he's got a good running game. I think the formula is perfect for him here. He's going to be reinvigorated now that he's on another team. I think Russell Wilson is in for a very big year for the Denver Broncos, and I could see him going potentially right up to 5. I think there's 2 quarterbacks that can potentially finish higher than him in this division, but I think he's going to have a great year. There's always that rushing ability with him, even though he's a little bit older, which is good for fantasy football. So if you like him and you want to, have a new flavor of him being on the Denver Broncos when you draft him, I think he's a great value at 10 right now.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing. Like, if Russell Wilson is on my draft board after 9 other QBs have gotten taken, I will take him and not be upset about it whatsoever.
Yeah,
it's just that for me, I think that's pretty much what I'll be expecting out of him as QB 10, maybe a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I don't think it's a situation where you draft him at QB 10 and he finishes like QB 20. Like, I don't think there's a huge way to miss on this one. So it's pretty low risk and high reward.
And don't be surprised, depending on how the summer goes, when we get closer to it, people may get excited about him and his value may go up a little bit more. He may go between that 5 to 7 range, probably closer to 7, I think. So look for him to rise, I think, as the summer goes on. So if you are starting your drafts now, be very happy that his ADP is currently at 10. So next question I got for you, Brian. Will Javonte Williams establish himself as the running back 1 this year? Or again, will he split carries with Melvin Gordon? Also, sticking to the 0 running back strategy, is Melvin Gordon a good 0 running back to target late in drafts?
So I'm sorry, JJ, but I absolutely think they will be splitting carries. I think they re-signed Gordon to a 1-year deal, right?
Yes.
So they're going to use him. They signed him. I think Javonte will definitely get more of the receiving work than Gordon.
Okay.
But unfortunately, it still puts them in that wide RB2 margin. I think Javonte is more of like an RB2 with RB1 upside kind of weights, whereas Gordon's going to be like a flex with possible RB2 weights.
I see Melvin Gordon splitting right down the middle, just like last year. And I see his value being a low-end running back 2. So a little bit higher than a flex. I think he's good for the 0 running back strategy. Javonte has a lot of upside, but unfortunately, I think his ADP is a little bit too high. I think it's going to be inflated, so I'm not as high on him as JJ is, thinking he could potentially be the bell cow this year. I think bell cow status comes next year. Melvin Gordon's on the 1-year contract. They're going to look to run him out of Denver after this year. Keep Javonte Williams fresh. I think they don't want to get these guys to get hurt. They want their plethora of weapons with Russell Wilson. That's why they're going to go with the split committee, which is never good for fantasy football. So I'm going with the one that's got the lower ADP and the better value in Melvin Gordon. Javonte will be all right, but he's overvalued. So the better value, I think, is Melvin Gordon in this backfield.
Yeah, Javonte right now, his ADP for PPR leads is 10.
Yep.
I don't love it, especially when you still got Melvin Gordon sitting over there. So in Dynasty, if you're doing a startup Dynasty, I think Javonte Williams is definitely good to look at. He's only 22, and after this season, Melvin Gordon will be gone. So definitely look at him if you're doing a startup Dynasty.
Yeah, and there's a nice statistical plane where it goes straight up to when they turn 23. It's strange how when they hit 23, running backs seem to take off. So and he's approaching that number too. So stats aren't everything, but he's approaching the number, so pay attention to it.
Absolutely.
All right, now we'll talk about the tight end position for the Broncos. So this is a little bit of an underrated player, and I'm going to butcher this name.
Albert O.
Yeah, do we like Albert O or Okwanu Bonham as a fantasy sleeper at the tight end position if you avoid the tight end position altogether during your draft?
So I'm a little biased because I feel I'm pretty sure I never avoid the tight end position. So by the time he would be on my board, it's just a no-go for me. I was bait on Noah Fant for a long time. I think they really developed their tight end position while he was there. Mm-hmm. So maybe as a team, now that they kind of have what they want from a tight end, you could see him be proficient, especially when you have Russell Wilson there. So if you completely fall asleep during the draft and wake up and somehow a bunch of tight ends are gone, there's definitely worse offenses that you could pick than the Denver Broncos for the tight end.
Yeah. Not only that, you want to target high-scoring offenses.
Right, exactly. And pretty much in the AFC West, all of them are going to be high scorers. So you can't if you're just like, I don't care about tight ends, I'll snag whatever is available way at the end, then Albert O might be one of the few that are still a decent picking at that point.
He is not one of my most hated options. He's one, if I looked at the end of it and I had to snag someone, I wouldn't hate it. If I look to just completely fade that position, I think Albert O would be completely fine. So, no, I think he's all right. You're obviously not drafting him high at any point.
No.
He may rise a little bit because people are going to talk him up, as fantasy owners do, because they want to be perceived as geniuses. But later on flyers, okay, much better options, and there's a lot of interest in the tight end position this year. And I think we're going to see a lot of talented tight ends take off this year. So, if you like them, take them at the end if you missed out on 10 other tight ends. But I'm looking elsewhere, I think. Next question I've got for you. And this is in the title of this episode, something I wanted to get your opinion on because I thought you'd have an interesting opinion on it. Is Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton going to be the number one wide receiver this year for Russell Wilson?
Yeah. I'll preface it with I might be a little bit biased because I have Jeudy in a lot of my leads. So I think it will be Jerry Jeudy. He's just so good. Sutton will be coming off injury. But I also think that what is that? Oh, you put me on a timer?
Yes, I don't want some middling answer. Give me your answer.
Okay.
Which one?
Jerry Jeudy. So I think Jerry Jeudy's wide receiver 1. I do think that it's possible that they both end up with wide receiver 1 numbers. Wilson has done it in the past, as recently as 2020. Even last season, where he was out for 3 weeks, he had 2 in the top 16. So I think them both finishing as wide receiver 1s as far as fantasy goes is absolutely possible. But Jerry Jeudy is the one on that receiving crew.
Good job, Ryan. You wrapped that answer up in under 30 seconds and said Jerry Jeudy was going to be the better value. Yes, I agree with you here. I think Jerry Jeudy is going to be the better value here too. I think Jerry Jeudy has potential wide receiver 1 upside. I don't know if he'll get there. It'll be close, right on the border. Cortland Sutton is a high-end wide receiver 2. I think he's going to sustain nice value for both of these guys this year. And where you see the real juicy value down this list, I think, is going to be Tim Patrick, who I think could be a nice red zone target for him, potentially bringing in 5 or 6 touchdowns. Someone you could really get towards the end of your draft. It'd be a nice value for you than a high-value offense. I think Tim Patrick could kind of more be the tight end for this offense as opposed to Herbert. I think he could kind of take the role. He's kind of got the body for it. He's really interesting, I think. He's perfectly built like one. And I think he's going to be a sneaky favorite of Russell Wilson. I think the other 2 will get the yards. They'll definitely get their touchdowns, but he could come away with 5 or 6 touchdowns. You know, the hybrid tight end in this offense, kind of reminds me of Quincy Enunwa. He doesn't do anything super exciting. He's not flashy. He's just Tim Patrick, but may target him late. I like Tim Patrick this year.
Yeah, and not to mention the last week of the season, man. He had a good one. Just under 100 yards. So he's had some decent weeks. Put up, like you said, 5 touchdowns. Had several weeks in double digits. So, I mean, taking a late round flyer on him, you can't. I mean, there's worse shots in the dark to take.
And imagine if an injury comes up to one of these 2, his value would skyrocket in that offense.
Right.
And so I don't think he's one of my favorite late round flyers. Really circle Tim Patrick, star him up, key him up, whatever you got to do in your league. Pay attention to him. I think he could really help your team out, and he could be nice bench depth for you. Any thoughts on fantasy football? Favorite of ours on Garbage Time Fantasy Football, KJ Hamler?
Listen, his breakout season's right around the corner.
We're only 3 or 4 years off it, right?
It's right around the corner. I've been predicting it for a while. It's bound to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. He had second round value, but Tim Patrick kind of rised above him. I'm not, burying him in the ground yet, but there's 4 wide receivers there. Not everyone can get the ball, so maybe he'll have to do it somewhere else. We'll see.
Well, I'm still gonna clear a spot on my bench for him, just out of principle.
Awesome. All right, let's move on to the Los Angeles Chargers and my man crush, and who I think will be the number 1 fantasy quarterback on this year. This is no secret. I've already told you this. Justin Herbert. So, question I've got for you, my bias ass question: can Justin Herbert win your fantasy football championship, and is he the best dynasty quarterback to own due to his age?
Yeah. So honestly, I think yes.
Nice.
He's only 24. Fantasy QB2 last year was. I mean, he's just a stud. He's legit, and from a strict. I'm going to try to say this without sounding super biased and I hate the Bills. But Josh Allen, a ton of his fantasy points, he finished 25 points ahead of Justin Herbert, but that was with a ton of rushing work. 6 touchdowns from rushing. That's going to start to go away the older you get. So true. I'm going to take the stud passer that had 5,000 yards, 38 touchdowns, 672 attempts. I'm going to go with that.
Okay, and then we'll talk about if he's better than Patrick Mahomes too when we get to the end of the show. I don't want to spoil that little surprise. So I completely agree with you. I think he's the best dynasty quarterback. I didn't want to say if he was the best quarterback in the division for all of fantasy football yet, because that's the end of the show. But I think he's the best dynasty quarterback.
Yes.
People are going to think that we're nuts because Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are also up there too. Also, there's a little guy that was in the Super Bowl with the Bengals you could talk about up there too. There's lots of guys that are up there, but I really like Justin Herbert. Straight up, top 5 quarterback this year. I think he could be the number 1 overall quarterback in Dynasty. We'll talk about if he's going to be in redraft this year when we get to that. So next question I got for you. Is Austin Eckler going to continue to get both the passing and the rushing work this year, recreating top 5 status, or will he cede work to rookie Isaiah Spiller? And do you see Spiller potentially as a flex play this year?
I hope so, man. So I'm a big Eckler guy in my fantasy league, so I hope so. But Eckler is not getting any younger, and I definitely think that there has been a want to kind of reduce his workload a little bit.
It feels like they've constantly been trying to get him a working partner for like the last 4 years, and it just hasn't worked out.
So, and I think a part of that is because they want to keep him healthy, and things of that nature. I still think he gets enough work to consistently be a solid RB1. Like I'm not super worried about that. But Spiller is an interesting play just because that offense is obviously already used to having a passing and rushing running back. So Spiller is a solid pick just if Eckler gets injured at any point or if he starts taking some of the workload. And then in Dynasty, once Eckler is gone.
I think I'm going to like to use Spiller a lot in week 1 in DraftKings. The
foundation's already there.
I could see him getting in the end zone week 1 for DraftKings. Yeah. It's like a really decent low-end value. For fantasy football, I do see Spiller as a potential flex play. Again, someone else you can target in the 0 RB strategy right at the end of your draft. Let me preface right at the end of your draft where he could have flex potential. In Dynasty, he's very interesting. Yes. So I think Austin Eckler is a good dynasty player, even for 4 or 5 more years, because he's got the passing work there. And running backs who age well are the ones that get the passing work. Eckler could just be their passing work running back later in his career.
He's aged pretty well.
Yeah, I think he's going to continue to for the next 4 years. I really think he's going to be in the league a little bit longer. And Isaiah Spiller could get that nice rushing work. So I think he's a nice pickup in rookie drafts if you haven't done that in the second round range. And I really like him in flex play and redraft too later in the draft. So there's some good work here. Austin Eckler may fall a little bit, maybe not top 3, but maybe 2-6 potentially. We'll see where I put him when we get to the running back rankings. Next question I've got for you. We will move to the tight end position and leave the wide receiver question for last. Is Gerald Everett worth drafting in this Los Angeles Chargers offense? We overdrafted tight ends for the Chargers last year. Are we going to do it again?
No. Nope. Lesson learned. I'm out.
My lesson hasn't been learned.
You have Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen.
Yeah, but 5,000 yards is a lot of volume to throw to and a lot of touchdowns. 38 is a lot. I mean, telling me 4 or 5 couldn't go to Gerald Everett?
I'm out.
I am not out. He would be my late round flyer, but I will be taking tight ends earlier. So again, this is a late round flyer, but I am not out on Gerald Everett. Next question. Is Mike Williams a better fantasy option than Keenan Allen, whose current ADP is 11 or 12? Based on the format, due to his lower ADP, do you see him having more upside also than Keenan Allen?
So, wait, what's Mike Williams' ADP?
Mike Williams is much lower, more of the 4th or 5th round.
4th or 5th round?
Yes.
And Keenan Allen's where?
11th or 12th overall wide receiver.
Oh, then Mike Williams then. Definitely. Only finished 9 points behind Keenan Allen in fantasy. Keenan Allen definitely had a lot more targets, resulting in more receptions.
I think fantasy owners are scared of Mike Williams because he started off hot and then faded heavy down the line.
Yeah, and his reception to target ratio kind of sucks. 76 receptions off 129 targets.
Tyler Lockett of the AFC.
Yeah, not ideal. But taking Keenan Allen that early is rough.
But he consistently does it every single year. Has pretty much finished as 11 or 12 the last 3 years. He's consistent.
So it depends. You trying to play it safe and just, I mean, basically, if you draft Keenan Allen at 11 or 12, you're going to get wide receiver 11 or 12.
Yep.
And then Mike Williams, if you want to take a shot, take him. What is it, like wide receiver 20 something?
Currently, yes.
Wide receiver 20 something, and might get a wide receiver 12.
I think you'll see that rise to somewhere between 15 to 20 as the offseason goes. And listen, Mike Williams,
if he's coming in at wide receiver 15, then I'm probably out.
Yeah, I think Mike Williams has the higher upside and will finally start playing Keenan Allen this offseason. Not just he's going to fall out of that Tyler Lockett status. Yes, people are scared because, it took 5 years for him to finally catch on. But listen, he's got his quarterback in Justin Herbert, who I think is going to look his direction more this season. I would rather take him at a lower ADP than Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is that fringe wide receiver 2 for you, high-end wide receiver 2. Depending on your format, could be 1, I guess, if you have a 12-person league. Depends on 10 to 12 teams in your league. But listen, I think the ceiling is higher with Mike Williams, but he's got more outcomes where you could miss out on it. But if, you have someone solid as your wide receiver 1 and you need that boom wide receiver 2, why not give a shot at Mike Williams? I think he's great. I brought this information up in a YouTube short that I did late last week. I think Mike Williams is the better value currently for the Chargers, but you cannot go wrong with either one of these. Just pick the one you like, and you're not going to go wrong. The Los Angeles Chargers offense is going to produce a lot of fantasy points this year. I don't think you can go wrong with either one. There's even a situation where both of them end up being wide receiver 1s. Mike Williams being the higher one, I think, and Keenan Allen right on the fringe, just where he is right now. I think that's honestly a possibility.
It almost happened last season.
High-powered division, too.
Like you kind of alluded to, I think it is going to be consistency versus the roller coasters. So Keenan Allen, you're probably consistently going to get the same numbers. Mike Williams will have those boom or bust weeks.
He'll be the one giving you the heart attack.
Yep, but either way, like you said, if you already have a wide receiver 1 and then Mike Williams is still there, then send it, go for it. But
all right,
what else you got?
Last question on the Chargers. Do we like Josh Palmer as a late round flyer at the end of the bench?
I guess when you have a team that, like you mentioned, 38 passing touchdowns and however many yards, might be worth it.
Him or Tim Patrick?
Ooh.
This one was a flyer I just thought off my head right now.
I think I'm going to say Tim Patrick just because I like the point you brought up where it's almost like he kind of finds himself in that tight end role.
Yeah.
And I think he can just get that red zone work.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. All right, now let's end this with some non-fantasy football questions, but divisional questions because this division is fun as hell.
Okay.
First question I got to you. Does the AFC West get 3 teams into the playoffs this year?
Yes, I think that's totally possible.
What are those 3 teams?
I would say that if I had to bet money, I'm going to say the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Raiders.
Really? All right. I would say the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Broncos.
Okay.
The Raiders getting kicked out.
That's fair.
Next question. Which quarterback finishes as a top fantasy option? This is why I didn't want to ask you yet. Is it going to be Patrick Mahomes, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, or Justin Herbert in redraft leagues this year?
I'm going to go Justin Herbert.
Me too.
Yep.
We are matching right here. And, the other podcasters on the show are probably going to flip a lid when they hear this part of it.
Can't wait.
I can't wait either. All right. And the last question I've got for you. Which one of these teams is winning the division this year?
I'm going to say the Chargers, man. I'm so sick of the Chiefs. Chargers. Chargers take it.
Me too. I think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year.
Young and hungry, man.
Man, I think they're going to win the Super Bowl. You think a Super Bowl team comes out of this division this year?
It's possible. I mean, and the Chiefs, they were hot for so long, but now they're all getting older. They're starting to lose some pieces. The Chargers right now are young, talented, and they're a good team. I'm thinking the Chargers win the division.
Hell yeah, man. And I'm pumped about seeing how this division plays this year. They're going to be fun, and if there's some matchups in the playoffs.
And their defense is nuts.
Yeah, no shit. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, guys. We've reached the end of the AFC West breakdown. If you like what you hear on Garbage Time Fantasy Football, this has been one of my favorite episodes of the offseason so far. Make sure to like and subscribe to the show. If you have different opinions than anything you heard on this episode, leave it in the comments below. We'll get back to you maybe on our next episode. Debate with us too. Go back and forth with us. If you want to leave that debate with us in audio format, do that at www.garbagetimeff.com, where there's a little tab on the right side of the website where you can leave us a voicemail and we will play it live on the show for you. We'll get right back to you on that too. Also, if you want to listen to us in audio format, you can do that on Apple, Spotify, Google, Pandora, Amazon, Iheartradio, Tunein, absolutely anywhere you get podcasts. Interact with us also at Garbage Time Fantasy Football on Instagram, and you can also interact with us on Twitter at garbage_time FF. Ryan, do you have any closing thoughts for the heckling fandom before we get out of here?
No, man, you crushed that. I hope Ron watches this episode and takes notes about how to close it out and get all the username rights and things of that nature.
And not drag that shit out all the time, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys. Absolutely. And Ron should be back tomorrow or Wednesday for his bold takes. So he's got 5 bold takes for us for fantasy football tomorrow. With that, guys.
All going to be Giants.
All going to be Giants takes, probably. Nah, just kidding. Good night, guys.